Today we're going to show you how to change the door lock latch on your washer, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a flat blade screwdriver, a number 20 Torx bit, and a 1/4 inch nut driver. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, we'll start by disconnecting the power, so simply pull the plug. And we'll also want to pull the washer far enough forward that we can tilt it back a bit. We'll need to remove the bottom access panel to gain access to 2 screws securing the front panel. To access those bottom screws, it's easier if we tilt it back and just put a couple of 2x4 blocks under the front legs. A 1/4 inch hex head screws. We'll just remove the 2 outside ones first and leave the one in the middle. You might want to maintain a little bit of upward pressure on that panel while you remove the last screw. And then tilt it out slightly and let it drop down. And you'll see that there are 2 locating pins that engage slots in the bottom of the front panel. So we'll set the access panel aside, and we can now see the 2 1/4 inch screws on the bottom. So we'll remove both of those. Now next we're going to remove the soap box, so just pull it forward. There's a little locking tab at the back that will just depress that, and that'll allow us to pull it completely out of the washer, and we'll set that aside. Now next we're going to remove a number 20 Torx screw that is in this opening on the left side here. So take that screw completely out, and then with a flat blade we're going to unhinge the top clips across that control panel to disengage them. So just gently slide a screwdriver in there without damaging the finish, and just disengage those locking tabs, and we can lift the panel out. You'll see the tabs across the top here. Set that just up on top of the washer. And we don't need to remove these 2 screws. You can loosen them if you wish, but they don't need to come out. We just want to make sure that when we pull this bottom panel out, that when it tilts, it doesn't damage the console. So next we're going to open the door, and we're going to remove the 2 number 20 Torx screws that secure the door latch to the front panel. These screws are slightly different than the one that we took out of the console, in that they have a washer built into the screw itself. So make sure we don't mix those up. Next we're going to loosen the door boot on the right hand side, and you may be able to grab it enough to pull it away, but if you can't, just take a flat blade screwdriver and very carefully go in behind the wire retaining ring, pull that out enough that we can roll the bellows right off of the front panel. We can set that spring clamp aside and just pull the boot out enough there that we can access the door lock. Now, while pulling gently out on the front panel at the bottom, we'll be able to unhook the door latch assembly from its holder, and there should be enough harness there to drop it out and pull it out through the side of the cabinet. Now there's a shield across that top one that we just need to pull out on the locking tab on the side of that. Now we can disconnect the 2 wire harnesses, and then a small one at the very back has a little locking tab that we just need to depress slightly, and we can pull that off. There are locking tabs on both of them, so simply depress the locking tabs, pull the harness out, tilt it up, and now we can discard the door latch. We'll reconnect all of the harnesses. Make sure they lock into place. And lock the shield across the top back into position. Now when we put this back into position, there are 2 hooks on the side of that door latch that will fit into a holder that is attached to the edge of the cabinet. So we need to pull that front panel out enough so that we can see where those hooks are and engage them. And they just slide down into that holder, and that will keep it in position until we can line up the opening and put the screws in. So next we'll reinstall the number 20 Torx screws and just grasp that center portion, line it up. We get both screws started. And then we can tighten them, make sure the door switch fits properly in the opening and isn't binding. Next we'll reinstall the door bellows. So we need to roll that over this lip on the front panel to make sure it fits in nice and snug. Once you see that it is sitting flush, we can now put the spring clamp back on. We'll need to make sure that the hooks on the end of the springs are properly seated in the clamp itself. And we're going to position that spring at about the 6 o'clock position. Roll it on as far as it will go without any tension on it. And then with our flat blade screwdriver, we're going to fit the end of the blade into that opening on the clamp. And then we're going to pull it towards us to stretch the spring. And that will allow us to roll that clamp down into position. And then just check and make sure that we haven't missed any spots and that it's laying flat all the way around. We'll next put the screws back in the bottom of the front panel. And if you've loosened the 2 screws at the top, we'll need to tighten those at this point. Next we can put the console back into position. There is a locating tab on the very end that fits into that slot. So we need to make sure that we engage that properly first. Make sure it snaps in completely across the top. We'll replace the Torx screw on the end. Replace the soap box. And just make sure that the 2 rails fit into the appropriate slides. Check to make sure that it engaged properly. We'll next put the lower access panel on. We'll want to make sure that we engage those 2 locating tabs properly. I find it best to put the center screw in first, so keep an upwards pressure on that panel. Then replace the 2 outside screws. Next, we can tilt the washer back and remove the temporary blocks. We're ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.